welcome back to Never Enough Novels for my February reading wrap-up. I ended up getting through 11 books in February, so I have a ton of short and sweet book reviews to share with you today. I'll just quickly give you my star rating and a little summary of what I thought, and I'm sorting this list from the books that I liked least up to the books that I liked the most at the end. You can find all of these books on Amazon, and I put the links to those down below, so if you want to help support this channel at no extra cost to you, you can use those links to purchase them. And make sure you hit like on this video and subscribe to my channel to see even more book reviews in the future. So let's dive right into the book that I liked the least this month, and that is The Ritual by Chantal Tessier. So this is often recommended as one of like the top dark romance books that you should read. So I tried out Kindle Unlimited this month and it was on there for free, so I gave it a shot and just ended up hating it. I only gave it 1 star. The book is like all steamy scenes, and that's fine if you like that, but I just need a lot more plot happening. And this is definitely a dark and brutal romance, which just wasn't my cup of tea. I know a lot of people love this book, but it just wasn't for me. It is also part of a much longer series, but I will be cutting this off here. Another book that I thought I would like but ended up not enjoying at all is called Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. I gave this one 2.5 stars. The concept initially really intrigued me because all we knew kind of at the beginning was that this author was on the phone with his wife and he hears her stop the car and get out and then just like nothing. And they never found a body or like have no idea what happened to this woman. The book picks up like a year later as Grady is still dealing with his grief and still has all these questions about what really happened to his wife. So he ends up going to this remote Scottish island in the hopes that he'll be able to just get away from the world, focus on his writing, and kind of restart his life again. And while he's there, he ends up seeing a woman who looks shockingly like his wife. So we have no idea if it's actually her or if he's kind of losing his mind a little bit and just seeing things. And based on that description, I was so intrigued to find out what was actually going on in the situation. But the book just felt like it dragged out way too long. And there was a lot of focus on Grady and like his internal struggles. And I just didn't find him that likable of a character. And there was also clearly something very shady going on this island, and he encountered a lot of very strange circumstances, but they were just like a little too off the wall for me. And like ultimately the end of the story was fairly interesting, but overall it just was not worth the entire ride. I do know a lot of people that did actually love this book, so it just wasn't right for me, but if you're interested in the concept, I'd still recommend giving it a try. The next book is actually the second book in a fantasy duology, and it's called Rebel Witch. So this is the follow-up to Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicciarelli, and I loved Heartless Hunter. I thought it was just such a fun and interesting fantasy. It's about a witch who kind of falls in love with a witch hunter who is like hunting down her kind, and they play a little bit of this game of cat and mouse where they start like fake dating to both try and get more information from the other, and it turns into like an actual love story, but there's still this overarching threat of the fact that like he is hunting down witches and she is trying to protect them. In the second book, we pick up a little bit later after the first story ends, and these two characters are kind of thrown back together and they are still struggling against this romantic attachment, knowing that each of them have different priorities. And it felt like the entire book was just going back and forth between these two of whether they decide to trust each other or whether they're going to double cross each other to put their own priorities first, or whether they're going to pursue this romantic relationship. And I kind of just got tired of it and just wanted the book to end. So I only gave this one 3 stars. I am hoping for more duologies in the future though, because I really like that idea with fantasy books because you're not committed to this like 6 or 8 book long series. It's nice to have the story wrapped up in a shorter period of time. So I'm on the hunt for more of those if you have any recommendations for me. The only other thriller I read this month is called The Business Trip by Jessie Garcia. This was also on Kindle Unlimited, so I figured I would give it a try. I ultimately gave it 3 stars. It was an interesting idea, and the story basically focuses on these 2 women who meet the same guy, supposedly, and end up being like seduced by him and then possibly murdered because they disappear. So we are trying to figure out like what happened with these women in this strange circumstance. But a lot of the writing felt cliche, and like some of the characters were just so over the top that it was not really believable. And there were some major plot holes that maybe other people wouldn't really mind, but just really bugged me with the inconsistencies and how it affected the story. So I couldn't get over that aspect of it. The ending was really satisfying, and I thought it was wrapped up really well, but it couldn't quite make up for those other little things that I just did not enjoy. Back in the dark romance genre is Deviant King by Rena Kent. So she is a very popular dark romance author, and she has a ton of books to her name that are all involved in different series. So I kind of saw that Deviant King is a good place to start within her world. So I wanted to give this a try. And again, with this one, there were a lot of spicy scenes to the detriment of the actual plot. So I was hoping for a little bit more going on. The whole series is about these group of guys who go to an elite school, and they basically run the school and can do whatever they want and get whatever they want. The first book is about Aiden and Elsa's relationship, and Aiden is the typical like bully, the villain who falls for the girl. But at the end, there was this sort of plot twist that actually kept me engaged enough to want to keep going in the series about whether or not like he's actually doing this with other motives or if he genuinely has feelings for her. So that was the only piece that actually brought this up to like a 3.5 stars for me. But I think I'm going to keep going with the series just to see what happens next. Another book that I gave 3.5 stars was Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. I listened to this on audio, which I did love that aspect, but overall, this book was just too long. She steps away from her normal like STEMinist novels where she focuses on women in like science, technology, or math, and this one was a sports romance, and it features 2 college swimmers who are both competing to try and make the Olympic team. I loved the relationship between them and was really rooting for them. Overall, though, there was just too much fluff in the story and too many scenes that didn't have any impact on the plot. I felt like it could have been cut down by like a quarter and it would have been perfect then. But if you do want to try this, I highly recommend the audiobook. The male main character has a European accent, which is phenomenal. That brings me to the books that I rated 4 stars or higher, and kicking off that list is Phantasma by Kaylee Smith, and this was a 4-star book for me. I normally do not like paranormal romances or books talking about ghosts, but this one had me hooked. Our main character, Ophelia, finds out that her sister has entered this deadly competition, so she decides to enter as well to try and protect her sister from within. So the competition is called Phantasma, and it requires that all of the contestants go through 9 different levels, which represent the 9 different levels of hell. Now, the contestants can leave at any time they want before a new level starts. However, the winner receives a gift or a prize of anything they want from the devil. So when Ophelia enters this manor house where the competition takes place, she is actually separated from her sister at first and can't get to her until she makes it through a certain number of levels. But she meets this phantom who kind of becomes her protector along the way, and she knows she is never supposed to make a deal with any sort of like devil or spirit. But she and this phantom agree to a deal where she will help him find this information that he's been looking for, and he will protect her through the games. This qualifies as a romantasy as Ophelia and this phantom get to know each other and start to fall in love. But that is like one of the cardinal rules of Phantasma, that you cannot love anyone else within the games. And that ultimately comes into play kind of toward the end. So I thought the competition was really interesting in itself and what the contestants had to go through on each of the different levels. And I also really liked the way the story was wrapped up at the end and kind of what was the overarching story going on with this competition and why it's been in place all these years. So this was a really fun read for anyone who likes these kind of romantasy books that have an aspect of competition to them. Another fantasy I read this month is from the Zodiac Academy series, and it's book 2, which is called Ruthless Fae. This is a reread for me. I have these books, but I actually listened to this on audio because I wanted to try out the graphic audios that they've been releasing. So these are audiobooks with a full cast and additional sound effects and things to make it almost sound like you're listening to a movie version of the book. I adore this series. I just think it is so much fun. It's not the most well written, and the later books get like really, really long. They are just such fast reads. I have so much action and stuff going on that I just get hooked on them. The whole series is basically about 2 twin girls who live in the mortal world but are captured when they turn 18 and are brought into this Fae world, and they discover that they are actually like the long lost heirs to the throne of Solaria. So they are thrown into the Zodiac Academy where they can learn more about their magic and this world, but it is not Hogwarts. The world that they are thrust into values power more than anything else, so everyone is kind of fighting to get to the top. I just adore the series and highly recommend it, so I'm excited for more of the graphic audiobooks to come out so I can keep listening to those as rereads as they come out. On a completely different note, another book that I gave 4.5 stars this month is called We All Live Here by Jojo Moyes. I am just a Jojo Moyes superfan. I love everything she writes, and this was no exception. This is a very simple book, but it's just full of heart. It's about a mom who's recently divorced, and she is just trying to navigate everyday life. So she's got 2 daughters that she's trying to raise, dealing with her ex-husband, who now has a pregnant new girlfriend. She's got her stepdad who has seemed to like permanently move into her house, and her absent father has now shown up on her doorstep. So it's like the breaking point for her as all of these things are going on. But as her world settles down a little bit and she kind of leans into new experiences, new romantic relationships, she starts to understand that this craziness that has been caused might actually be the perfect thing for her. Jojo Moyes just does such an incredible job writing about women, and her characters are incredibly relatable. So I love this one. I kind of just savored it. It's not like a page turner or anything, but it's just a really lovely story that I think women everywhere will enjoy. The last fantasy on my list for this month is called One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. And I think this came out like 2 or 3 years ago, and I just noticed it in the bookstore and was kind of intrigued. It's another duology, so that's part of why I picked it up, because like I said, I've been more interested in these fantasy books that just have 2 books in the series. So it had a really unique magic system, which hooked me right from the start. Basically, the magic system is based on these 12 different cards that have different abilities. And our main character has an interaction with one of the cards that has caused this like nightmare to show up in her head, and she is dealing with his intrusion throughout the course of her life. But having any sort of like magic or infection, as they call it, in this world is extremely dangerous. So she has hidden this fact her entire life. But in this story, she kind of reluctantly teams up with a group of people who are essentially traitors to the crown, who are trying to collect a full set of these 12 cards so that they can overturn the magic in the land and save someone dear to them. And there is a sort of broody, reluctant hero who ends up falling for the main character kind of against his will. And I loved their slow burn romance throughout the entire thing. Plus, there's a lot of focus on the cost of magic, and there are definite consequences whenever someone uses these cards. So I think that push and pull between like magic isn't for free and the theme of that throughout the book was really interesting. So I gave this one 4.5 stars, and I just started reading the second book in the series soon. So I am excited to see how this story wraps up. And lastly, the only book that I gave a full 5 stars this month is First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. I had such high hopes for this book because I absolutely adore her Love Light Farm series, and this book completely delivered. So I am just like a super fan at this point. I love that her romances feel like fresh and exciting. So they have a lot of similar tropes and things that we're used to, but there are always moments in the story that just like make me laugh out loud or take me completely by surprise. So her writing is so unique in that aspect. This book features the host of a radio show about love who teams up with a single mom to try and find her the love of her life. So as these two spend more and more time together in the booth, kind of answering questions about love and searching for candidates for potential dates for her, they discover that there is a definite attraction between the two of them, but they each have reasons for not wanting to pursue anything. She ends up going on a few dates, but they are absolute duds, and she just like can't get Aiden out of her mind. So this was another really fun slow burn between the two of them. I loved the forced proximity aspect since they are both like sitting inches from each other as they're talking on air together. And the daughter and her dads are also really fun side characters. So honestly, this was just perfection. I cannot recommend it highly enough. That wraps up all the books that I read in February. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these too, or what your favorite book of the month is. And stick around so you can check out my March reviews in a couple of weeks.